Boa tarde a todos. Eu sou a Luciana Torello, gerente de projetos da Sphere International School. Muito obrigada a todo mundo que está nos acompanhando hoje. Eu quero agradecer também a Conexia, que está nos apoiando muito hoje com nossa live. E também quero agradecer a duas convidadas mais do que especiais que vão estar conosco hoje. Uma é a Natália Tieso, que é Outreach Manager for Latin America at IB, e a outra é a Clemesha, que é a nossa diretora acadêmica na Sphere International School. Bom, a gente vai ter uma breve apresentação da Natália, que ela vai nos contar um pouquinho como as escolas internacionais estão se comportando nesse momento de pandemia. E vai falar sobre o apoio que o IB está dando para todos nós nesse momento e como as escolas estão se preparando para esse momento de retorno às aulas pós-pandemia. Tá? Enquanto elas estiverem apresentando, eu queria falar que vocês podem mandar aqui pelo chat ao lado perguntas para a Natália e para a Susan. As perguntas podem ser em português, em inglês ou espanhol. E ao final que elas falarem, eu vou estar encaminhando as perguntas para elas. Tá bem? Bom, Natália, thank you kindly for being here. And Susan, welcome.
Thank you, Luciana, and it's my pleasure. Thank you so much to all the participants and Conexia also. Thank you, Natália, for joining our webinar. Eu vou começar contextualizando um pouquinho esse webinar, né, para os nossos participantes. Então, situando um pouco a Sphere International School. Nós somos uma rede de escolas que nasce a partir da experiência da Esfera, Escola Internacional, que fica localizada em São José dos Campos, no estado de São Paulo. É uma escola que já existe há 15 anos e que é certificada pelo IB nos programas PYP e MYP. Assim como todos vocês que nos acompanham aqui, nós vivemos um momento sem precedentes, né, de transição para o ensino remoto. Trabalhamos na Escola Esfera. E nesse momento, a gente também reconhece a solidez do Grupo SEB e também de fazermos parte de uma organização, né, como o IB, de um conjunto de escolas certificadas pelo IB, que traz, então, esse olhar cuidadoso para esse momento que veio de forma inesperada, mas que o IB olha sempre para as pessoas em primeiro lugar e para a estrutura que pode ser acomodada para se trabalhar, então, com cada uma dos ciclos, com crianças de diferentes idades, mas sempre olhando para as crianças e para as pessoas envolvidas nesse processo antes de mais nada. So let's switch to English, and Natália, thank you once again for joining us, and let's begin with your presentation, and we can chat a little also during your presentation.
Thank you very much, Luciana, and also Susan, for this fantastic introduction. I hope now the magic will appear and you'll be able to see my presentation, correct? Yes. So first of all, I want to apologize because I do not speak Portuguese, so I'm going to deliver the presentation in English, but feel free to send us questions in English or Spanish or Portuguese at the end so that we can make this presentation interactive. First of all, I'm going to introduce myself, and that's why in this picture you will see the obelisco. I am based in Buenos Aires, Argentina. I've been working for the IB for almost 8 years now. And for the last 2 years, I've been working as outreach manager for Latin America. That means that even though I'm based in Buenos Aires, I travel very frequently in Latin America region. I don't know how I'm going to continue traveling, but the idea is that I'm totally at the service of Latin American schools and also Ministry of Education and University. And before even getting to know each other a bit more, I would like to thank Sphere International Schools and Connect Educação for organizing this fantastic webinar, and especially for giving me the opportunity to connect with you. So now let's see if we continue with the magic of technology. So I'm going to ask you to take your mobile phone and to go to menti.com. I will stop here. I will go to the website so that you can also share with me your role. So 1 second. I think that the magic is happening now, and yes, it is. So the idea is I would like to invite you to go to your mobile phone to get into the website menti.com and use the code 590650 so that you can start choosing your own replies in terms of the role you are having at this moment in your school. Is it working okay? I don't seem to get any reply, so let's see if okay. I think we have a problem, Houston, but don't worry. Maybe we can at the end talk a little more about your roles, but the idea was to get to know you. Okay, there I'm getting some replies. So I think it takes some time. So I see that there are people who are area departments coordinators, a primary school teacher, secondary school teacher. Fantastic. I can see that now it's working. Thank you. This is I don't know if you've ever seen this website, but the idea is that this is a resource that you can also use with your students. This gives you like interaction in a conference or even in this online learning environment. So I see that heads of schools, coordinators, teachers, oh, we've got a little of everything. Not professors from university, that's good. Because I will be talking and focusing on primary and secondary school most of my presentation. And then of course I will talk to Susan in terms of experiences. Okay, so far we've got heads of schools and coordinators, that means leadership team and primary teacher. Fantastic. So I hope you will find these resources useful, because the idea is to give you, let's say, food for thought, especially when you start planning the reopening of your schools. Whoa, now we have more people participating. This is fantastic. Thank you. And now let's move into the following question so that I can continue getting to know you more. And here, oops, don't worry, this happens all the time, right? Let's see if you can now let me know how you are feeling these days in terms of the quarantine or the pandemia, how you as a teacher are feeling in terms of looking forward to your holidays, enthusiastic about the reopening of a school, or terribly tired of planning, or not applicable. This may also be an option. Okay, I feel enthusiastic, that's good. And let's see if I happen to get more tired of planning. Yes, I know this has been such a demanding time for us as teachers and educators. Okay. So we are like thinking about holidays. Please some rest, and also reopening of school. That is like equal, right? This is super interesting. Okay, so this is great to know. Like, we are very, very positive. Teachers, usually educators, are usually very positive and optimistic about changes. So the idea is that now I get to know a bit more about yourself, about your roles and positions, and also the enthusiastic. So now I will stop here and I will go to the presentation. This will be updating, and then when we send you the details, we will also have that code for you to see how we are all feeling in this community. So now, magic again, magic time once again. Let's see. Perfect. So, thinking into account our feelings, now I would like to share with you some things that we have done, some actions, concrete actions that we have done at the IB, but also the idea is to feel relaxed in these 60 minutes. And that's why I included this icon of Snoopy, because I know that somehow we are all need some relaxation from connectivity problems, and that's why this Snoopy into the namaste position, so that we can also relax and think and reflect about our own practice. So the idea now is just to share with you the background of what we do at the IB and why, as international organizations, have given some response to our schools. So when we think about the IB, we are thinking about 6,000 programs that are taught in more than 5,000 schools all around the world. And you will see that we've got like 3 acronyms in this slide that respond to the different regions of this international organization. So IBA is IB Americas, that has the region with more numbers of schools. Then IBAP, that is Asia Pacific, that is the region that first closed schools. And then we've got IBAEM, that is Asia, Europe, and Middle East. So you'll see that most schools are in our region, Americas. And if we think about LATAM or Latin America, we are going to think about almost 800 schools that are in Latin America. And particularly if we think of Brazil, you will see that here in Brazil, we are going to talk about 43 schools that have been recently authorized, and these schools can offer different programs. The PYP, as Susan mentioned, the primary years program, then the MYP, the middle years program, and the DP, the diploma program that is offered in the last 2 years of secondary school. What is super interesting about Brazil is that most international schools in Brazil that deliver the DP, that is to say the diploma program, offer it as a bilingual program. So they are talking about Portuguese, English, and even some schools in Spanish. So that's a great effort in terms of the culture that is also associated with in international education. Now I'm going to share with you what has happened in the recent weeks and months in the IB world because of this COVID-19. The most important piece of news was held at the very end of March, when the diploma program exams in the May sessions were cancelled. In the diploma program, we have 2 sessions depending on the school calendar. That is to say that schools that usually start lessons or classes in February or March have got November exams, or exams taking place in November, and those schools that usually start in August, September usually have exams in May. So because of this COVID-19, the IB has decided not to have the face-to-face exams, and what we did as an organization was to base our grades on the ongoing assessment for those 2 years. That is to say that in those 2 years, students usually have internal assessment. That is to say, examinations that are corrected by the teachers, but also following different criteria in all the subjects. So this year, what we've done is we have taken all the assignments that have been done for the last 2 years and have been corrected by examinations or examiners at the end, so that students will be able to get the diploma if they get the results in all the subjects. So this has been huge, especially because we've been working very closely with universities. And this is really important because you know that students, especially in these international schools, really get benefits in terms of scholarships, and they move to different countries for university. So we've worked very closely with the universities so that this diploma in May 2020 can still be recognized in all universities around the world. Also, what we've done in terms of our community has been to give schools opportunity to be connected. So we've got like 2 campaigns. One is IB Together and the other is about IB Art, where we've given the schools the opportunity to be connected and also to share the work they are doing at school, in some cases when they've got homeschooling, and also with parents, and also in terms of art. And one of the most important, let's say, academic support has been the development of this material that is called Online Learning, Teaching and Education Continuity Planning for Schools. And now I'm going to share with you some ideas that have been proved to be very effective for our international schools. But I also think that this is a great idea for any schools to start thinking, especially when we in this reopening phase. So just a small note. If you would like to have that material, you will be able to send me an email. I'll be able to share it with you without any problem, because we really want all our school community to have like good resources to get effective education, especially in these special times. And I've included here like some tips or suggestions that we have shared with our schools in terms of what has to be assessed when we continue thinking about online teaching. And I will share with you some good practices, and I will then ask Susan to join me so that we can also give examples in her schools. So first of all, when we think about devices, we really need to make sure that we understand that schools have got different context when we think about the home of our students. So sometimes our classes are not given by a laptop, but by mobile phone, and that is also completely different. So really, as teachers, we need to understand the reality of different families. Some families, of course, may have the fortune to have one or even more laptops, but if not, what we have encountered is that parents need their laptops to work, while their brothers or sisters or siblings also need to connect. So what is really important is in terms of the resource and the internet access. So sometimes what has happened in our schools is that many people connected in one neighborhood even can be a problem. And just for you to know, this happened even to me on Monday. I had a big problem with internet connectivity. So that also needs to be taken into account when we plan our lessons for our students. That is also connected with topic number 3, that is about time zone friendly schedules or schedules. This is about how we, as educators, need to understand that students, of course, are not going to be able to be in 8 times in front of the laptop. Maybe we don't want it, of course, but the idea is to give students and to inform parents about this schedule so that the all the family can adapt to our educational needs. In terms of effective feedback, we believe at the IB that formative is super important in terms of the process, right? And I will talk about the assessment later on. But we need to give students the opportunity to become more autonomous or more independent. So this idea of flipping classroom, right? So we give students assignments or activities they can do alone, they can research on the website, and later on we've got effective feedback and quality time with teachers. And I would say especially because what has happened in many cases is that teachers then record themselves delivering a topic, and honestly there are so many resources available at the internet that are better than maybe us, like filming or recording. I'm talking about, for example, Khan Academy. You may have heard of it, of course, because it's super famous. It's free and they've got fantastic resources. So that's why we really believe in giving opportunities for our students to do some research and inquiry-based approach.
I don't know if I can interact just a minute. Can you hear me well now? Yes?
Perfect. Yes, of course.
Okay, because now I have my earphones here, and so I think maybe the audio is a little bit better. I apologize for the beginning that I think we had a problem with the audio. But if we go back a slide, Natália, you were just talking about access to devices and time zone friendly schedules. Our reality in international schools in Brazil may be that maybe hardware is not so much of an issue, but of course we always have, you know, issues with with connectivity if the connection fails, or even in terms of the scheduling. I have a friend who teaches at WAB, the Western Academy of Beijing, and she's currently in the US. So because her school hasn't, she hasn't gone back to school yet in Beijing, so she's teaching online, and I don't know for how many weeks now. It must be over 12 weeks now out of school, and but she has students from 8 different time zones. And I don't think that's the case in most of our schools here, because our families, at least in the Brazilian bilingual international school, the majority of the families live in Brazil, are working in Brazil, and so the kids are here within the same time zone. But scheduling, of course, is a big issue, because we have very different needs for young learners and more independent learners in the middle years or in high school. So this is, I think this was the main focus of this transition to the remote learning. It was like, how can we find this balance, and how can we have a schedule that really suits the needs of all families? And how can we listen to the families, receive feedback, make adjustments, and create opportunities for independent learning, because not everything needs to be synchronous, right? So I think that is
exactly.
That was a very delicate issue, finding the balance between synchronous and asynchronous learning.
Exactly, Susan, I couldn't agree with you more. And even if you think about family life, if we think about classes started at 9 a.m. and then you have the father is connected to the internet because he's got some assignments in his job, the mother also, maybe siblings. Also, you cannot expect some help from a father or a mother if at that time he also has a meeting with his boss. So that's why this idea of friendly schedules. And on top of it, I can also think of teaching lessons with a schedule, but also what we need as educators is to give students some time to reconnect. Let's say that we teach for 1 hour biology or whatever, but we also need to give them students the first 15 minutes to talk about the week and what they've been doing, because this is a stressful moment for everybody. So when we think about scheduling, it's not going to be about just 45 teaching lesson, but also to have this like non-pedagogical time for students to interact with each other, because once again, social skills are essential in this context.
Exactly. Also, a good friend who works with bilingual education in New York, she poses 3 questions always for all teachers and educators working in this context. So people first, content second, and technology third. So you can't really start promoting all sorts of different kinds of platforms and apps, and let's use Flipgrid and Padlet, and let's do the Zoom calls, and let's do the live meetings and all of that if the family is going through illness and anxiety and managing everything that needs to be managed in a household. So this attention to people first, teachers, how are teachers feeling? How can schools support teachers also in their anxieties and in their needs at this time? And then what is it that we need to address? What is relevant? What is the most relevant learning at this moment? Because adjustments will have to be made, right? So curriculum is about, curriculum planning is about identifying what is relevant at what moment. And then, of course, finding the most engaging forms of developing this content and accessing children, the students, the learners, and then promoting formative assessment and feedback and everything else.
Exactly. And on top of it, when everything started, this quarantine started, we teachers were crazy about, all the tools that we have never used. And it was about Zoom or Teams or Kahoot or everything. And really what we need to understand now in order to move forward is that it's not about technology, because really we, at the very beginning, thought that it was just a translation of of the content. And in fact, what we have learned is that we really need to think about the abilities that we want to help students to develop. So it's not about which app to use, but rather what we want to teach. And this has been a learning process for teachers, especially because that's why I read a fantastic piece of research developed by a US based university that was calling this process not about online teaching, but rather remote teaching for emergency, because we really had to adapt. And it wasn't like, okay, we have developed this material for online learning, because that is a different skill, but we didn't have enough time. So that's why what teachers are doing is so inspiring in terms of adjusting and thinking again about their students in the center of our process of teaching and learning. Do you agree, Susan, so far? Perfect. Okay, I will move on, but I will continue talking to Susan so that everybody can also join. Again, these are some extra or additional ideas for you even to think after this webinar, because Clemesha, Educação, and Sphere International Schools will share with you the presentation and the link. But what I wanted also to think about in this term of the policy of how students submit work when they do it online. Because there is this temptation that especially teenagers may fall into downloading everything and not producing work. So for us, academic honesty is super important in terms of the copyright material, right? So one thing is to help authors talk to each other, and then students are going to give their own personal opinions and think about the reflection upon the conclusions. But for us, it's super important to make sure that the references are included in the work that students are going to submit us. Two further remarks, because I know that we are going to talk a bit further with Susan, but I want to make two further remarks that are super important. What we have also discovered in international schools is that we need to be very careful in terms of privacy and data protection, because we are talking about students who are not adults. So if we think about recording lessons with our students, and we don't have the permission of parents, and then we want to upload those assignments in the website, we really need to be careful in terms of child protection, especially because you know that as they are going to be, let's say, they can be identified. So this could be a problem that we really need to be very conscious of. And also the other, let's say, warning is about the screen time. In some schools, parents complain about students being too many hours in front of the computer. In other contexts, parents complain because they are paying for a full tuition and maybe students are not in front of the computer for 8 hours. So it's a tension, but what is really important is that we as adults, especially as educators, plan carefully the time students really need to be in front of the computer and doing what, because there are like different activities. It's not the same to do research than watching a video or even recording a video for our own community. So I think that those further remarks are very connected with the legal aspect of data protection and also in terms of the well-being of our students, because we really want to have them a balanced time with connectivity, with technology, especially because students are also super used to being connected with the online games. So there is gamification that is also happening. Moving forward, I just want to share with you one piece of research. This was a survey that was done by a non-for-profit organization, and this survey was carried out to 200,000 teachers, and it's based on what experiences the teachers will apply once the school will be reopened. And what has been very important to, at least for me, is that we as educators are understanding that it's super important to give emotional support to our students. So it's not about just the curriculum, but rather to be flexible when planning and to give students the extra support they need. And I think that in terms of the extra support they need, this is not just because of the COVID-19. This is because we are in the 4th industrial revolution. I'm sure that you've heard, you've read, and you've listened to the World Economic Forum education framework that has stated that there are 8 rubrics that are essential for schools to help students develop. And we are talking about skills once again. So interpersonal skills are essential. And once again, we are talking about leadership, negotiation, social awareness. So what I want to really share with you is that these ideas of giving students tools to get to know themselves better is not something that is transitional because of the COVID-19. It's something that we need to keep when we reopen our lessons or our students. And I'm also sharing with you this fantastic webinar that I took like a couple of weeks ago that was organized by UNESCO, sorry. And here, this webinar posts like 3 dimensions that we as educators need to focus on when we think about the reopening of schools. So first of all, we have the curriculum and academic work, thinking about the remedial work, what would need to be done and planned when we reopen. But then they talked about assessment, and I've just included this idea of formative assessment, perfect. But what was really interesting for me to learn or to think of as a conclusion of this webinar was about the social and emotional projects. really, when we think about coming back or the reopening of schools, we would need to think about how students are going to play during our break, right? Because they will not be able to play football in the break, or maybe students will not be able to come back at the same time because the classroom is not big enough because of social distancing. Or maybe last weekend I was watching the news in France, and in France it was interesting for me to know that 2/3 of parents didn't send their children to school because they really didn't, they were afraid. So how are we as educators going to prepare our lessons? Because it may happen that we will have some students in our classes physically face to face, while others won't, and they will continue on the virtual learning environment. I think this is a big challenge for us to think about, the leadership team especially, to think about this idea. Susan, what do you think? How do you envision this reopening, especially in international schools in Brazil?
Well, this is the moment we're going through now, Natalia, because we don't know for how much longer we will be on this remote learning system, and when we will actually reopen the schools. And so I think there's two aspects, right? We of course need to plan for safety and health and all the contamination issues that may happen in an environment such as schools. And so will all the kids come back at once, or will younger children come back first, gradually? And also these issues that you presented. So how in schools you can't really avoid completely physical contact, but in inquiry-based learning, where group work is something that is valued so much, then how will we continue to have active engagements, but trying to keep a safe distance also from each other? Also issues such as, will we be taking the children's temperatures? Will we be asking them to wear face masks in middle school or not? And so all of these issues are now being organized. And of course, schools differ and they're independent in their decisions, but we've seen a couple of those videos online, on the social media, of the children going back to school in Asian countries, and where there's a line of people, somebody taking the temperature, changing the face mask, and making sure that they're all safe to walk into school. But I guess that's not our reality. We will be taking children's temperatures. I think many, a lot more than before, and we will be concerned about serving snack and meals and lunch, and keeping a distance in group work, and even out in the gym and at recess time. All of these procedures need to be taken care of and carefully organized. The other big issue is, what is teaching and learning going to look like? So yes, we may not have all of the students back at school even when schools reopen. So how are we going to support the kids who are also at home? Will they be allowed to stay at home? And still, will we be able to have two different systems going on at the same time? Will there be, how, and above all, how is each individual child going to be assessed? Each individual student going to be assessed? Because we've had almost 2 months now, and who knows exactly how long this is still going to take of remote learning. And so some of them will have developed well. When we receive feedback from students from this period, some of them say that they actually enjoy it, that they're very productive. They enjoy not being interrupted by their peers, and they feel that they're more productive. Others feel extremely bored. Others feel overwhelmed. and they really need a lot of intervention. And so these kids will all need to be carefully assessed, and we need to look at their individual learning journeys. And so how is this going to happen, and what is teaching and learning going to look like for each child to be able to develop their full potential back when they come back to school? So a big challenge for all of us.
Exactly, and that's why I was super happy to get into today's presentation with the enthusiastic, like, okay, we're in the positive mood, and this is going to help us as educators, because I really think that we will need to help students to get to know better and to self-manage better in terms of what motivates them. So once again, I believe that in this transition, I think that social emotional learning is a great focus in terms of remedial work, thinking about academic and curriculum work, but also if we think about inequity, because when I think about the digital gap, I'm referring to the digital gap, but I'm also thinking about those students who may have had great connectivity, but maybe his or her parents were super busy working at home. So also I'm thinking about the intellectual capital inequity in some of our classes that may be a challenge for us when we get back to school.
Definitely. So that's you're absolutely right. And so that's why we always have to think about people first, right? So even the independent learners, our teenagers, and in the middle years or in the upper years, these families may have faced high degrees of anxiety and illness and all sorts of issues that we can actually imagine, and that will need to be accounted for when they come back. So it's not only the learning, right? It's the whole learner.
Exactly, and I think that that's why it's so important to put students in the center of our teaching and learning process, because sometimes we got carried away about content, just the curriculum. And I think that this is a time to refocus on students' development as a whole, like a holistic approach and well-balanced student. So just to finalize, and so that we can open the field for questions, I'm going to say that the IB is going to offer a free webinar like next week, next Tuesday. It's going to be, it says there 2-3 p.m., but it's the US time. So our time, Brazilian time and Argentinian time, is going to be starting at 3, from 3 to 4. That's going to be in English, and then I will deliver another one by June in Spanish. So feel free to register if you want to think or to dig deeper, I would say dig deeper into social emotional learning. I'm going to stop here because I think that I've talked too much. I'm going to say once again, thank you very much. Obrigada. I need to continue with my lessons of Portuguese. I know Luciana is going to be, yes, Natália, you need to continue. But I want to say that it's been an honor, and I really appreciate Connecta Educação and Sphere International School for this invitation. I will stop sharing my screen so that we can open up for questions if you'll agree. And of course, please stay safe and healthy, and I hope all your school community is healthy as well. So I will stop sharing now. Thank you.
Okay, we have some questions already. The first one is to Natália. Natália, there is a viewer saying that IB schools in Asia that restarted their activities now probably have good benchmarks to share. She's asking if it's possible for IB to organize some best practices and procedures to share with Latin America. Do you think it's possible?
That would be a fantastic idea. Yes, I know also about, maybe that person can send me an email so that I can reply, because I've been presenting in a webinar that one international school from Asia Pacific shared the online I would say, journey that I'm going to say it wasn't that difficult for that school, because they had already like many learning platform and experiences that they knew, but it's going to be great if we can do it, I think, yes. And I can share with that person what one school has already done as the best practice. So if that person can send me an email, I will be able to share resources with him or her.
Also, Natalia, on the online learning publication, there are two best practices, but of course not connected to coming back to school, connected to the transition to online learning. So of course there's those are interesting practices, but maybe now we
exactly
would need
that's why I was thinking about the reopening.
the next step now, right?
Yes, so yes, an email I can share with that. Yes, of course.
Okay, thank you. Now, Susan, a viewer is asking which platforms for early childhood and elementary Sphere is using. If you could talk a little bit about that.
Okay. Well, at Esfera, the Sphere School in São José dos Campos, Google Classroom is used as the learning environment. And one thing that I've mentioned already is that it took the school, I think, a couple of weeks to adjust the schedule to make a good balance between synchronous and asynchronous learning. Because when we talk about tools, apps for very young learners, well, my question is, do we really need them? You know, and that's also in the IB publication. So we shouldn't assume that online learning or that using technology directly with such young children is a must, or it's even desired. You know, sometimes what we need to do is we need to have very specific learning guides, but for the families. And I must say, I know that many families don't want to receive these learning guides. They say, we've got a lot of work to do, but I'm so sorry. This is the moment requires this, you know? And yes, we would rather be teaching the kids at school, but we can't. And so do we want the kids to sit in front of a computer? Do we want? Not necessarily. But of course, the morning message, so a Zoom call is always a possibility for a morning greeting, a morning message. The recorded videos work very well. So there's a resource, a tool called Flipgrid that is amazing, and the kids can record short videos. And we have tools also such as Go Formative for formative assessment, but Google Classroom is where the teaching and learning is consolidated, and the notes are sent to the families, and the learning guides are sent to the families. But different teachers also use different resources, such as Padlet also is something that is very much used, Kahoot, and so there's a number of different apps that are used for young learners and elementary. But again, do we really need them? Or do we need to have very clear guides with recorded videos? Because for the very young learners, the teachers record the daily messages also. And when we get the kids to record short videos and upload their short videos, then that's a very, I think, interesting form of communication with children who don't read and write.
Can I jump on that? Can I build on Susan? First of all, I've got to say that most international schools also use Google Classroom because they had been using it before, so they were just using the same. And also in terms of habits, how important habits are, especially building habits when we're talking about kindergarten or first graders, I would say. Because what has happened in most Latin America is that schools had just started 1 or 2 weeks just before the quarantine. So really, the bond with the teacher in some cases were just being developed. So that's why the alliance between the school and parents is essential. So I totally agree with you, Susan, in terms of, do we really need so many apps with young learners? Especially because what we are doing is that now, many people, many adults are getting crazy about being chefs, cooking. Everybody is like super experienced about cooking. So that is an activity, once again, that can be done between the student and parents and family. And that can be guided by the school in terms of, I don't know, quantity or colors, like different teaching and learning objectives, but in the context of household or family life.
Exactly. Making these connections to your real life, to your context, and again, choosing like what is relevant at this moment, because all of a sudden, like, oh, we need to teach remotely, so let's get traditional. And so this is, no, it's the opposite. It's the opposite. So it's like, it's inquiry-based learning, it's concept-based learning, it's okay, how can we do research, how can we work in groups so that the teachers don't need to be with 20 different learners at the same time. They can work in small groups online also, and so this is something that I think takes a little bit of time, but luckily now that these first weeks, are over, and I think everybody has settled down a little bit more, and they're ready to look at, oh, okay, yes, we can make learning meaningful in a remote learning environment.
And that's why it's so important to give students a possibility of collaborative work among themselves, and then the teacher having this mediator role. Because at the very beginning in many schools, what happened was that teachers were crazy because of correction, because they had sent so many worksheets in terms of traditional work because it was easy. So parents got crazy about printing those worksheets. Then they would take photos so that the answers could be emailed to teachers. And then teachers would spend like many hours correcting. And then I also remember one teacher that told me that while she was working on her computer, her son dropped some milk, just, an accident. And she got crazy, like saying, oh my God. And this is what has happened. It is so common that at the very beginning, people were like nuts because it was a great demand for teachers. So I think that now we really need to calm down, to have like good ideas, to be resourceful, creative, and just to focus not on all the curriculum that we would teach last year. This is new. We need to adjust. So once again, I think it's about the student-centered teaching and good quality that is real life and meaningful for students.
Okay.
And I'm going to shut up. Sorry.
No, thank you a lot, Natalia. Susan, there is a viewer who's asking, how is Sphere organizing the schedule and time on education through internet nowadays during this crisis?
So I think I've spoken a little bit about this before, but in the early years, so specifically in for kids ages 2 to 5, they have roughly maybe 3 live sessions a week. So they don't have live moments every day because the families go crazy saying, no, I can't connect to the live moments at that time every day. And so maybe 3 a week. There's the recorded videos every day. So every day there's 2 or 3 videos, short videos, recorded by the teachers, the art teacher, the music teacher, the or library teacher, and physical education. They have mindfulness. So they have these short videos, 2 or 3 every day, and the learning guides with the activities that are suggested to be done at home. They've received little packages with supplies, with stationery materials, and also with things they would need to work at home also. Work, poor kids. So to do their schoolwork at home. And in elementary, we have daily live moments. So there's a live moment every day. There's a live interaction. Then they have in year 4 and year 5, sometimes they have more than one. They actually have a morning live session and an afternoon live session also with the different teachers. And then they have the independent learning time as well. So all of this is published on Google Classroom, and they have to follow through this weekly schedule that is a combination of the live lessons and the independent learning that is assigned to them. And in middle school, actually, we have the live lessons according to the schedule. So the teachers are actually online with the children, but assigning independent work. But they're there, available to teach their mini lessons and to support the learners according to the regular class schedule in middle school.
Ok, thank you. Susan, estão pedindo se você poderia repetir o comecinho da sua fala, que acho que o seu som lá no começo falhou um pouquinho. Então, se você puder repetir só aquele início que você falou, as pessoas estão pedindo.
Ok, então eu vou repetir, porque eu acho que também nós estamos encerrando, não é? Por agora.
Isso.
Então, mais uma vez, queria agradecer a presença da Natália nessa conversa. Muitas graças, Natália. It was
Thank you
nice,
kindly, Natália.
Obrigada!
Cute.
Natalia has been with us before, and it's, as I mentioned at the beginning, it's such an honor for us to be able to have this close relationship with you and with IB Americas, because that allows us to not only be informed of best practices, but also have conversations like this one, where we can actually even ask you to advocate for things that may be important for our school community, such as our participant suggested, right, today. Mas vamos lá, então eu vou rapidamente só contextualizar a minha fala introdutória, né, que foi sobre a nossa escola, a rede de escolas, a Sphere. Então, a Sphere é uma rede de escolas que nasce a partir da experiência da Esfera, a escola internacional que fica em São José dos Campos, no estado de São Paulo. E a Esfera, ela existe há 15 anos, ela é uma escola certificada nos programas PYP e MYP, do IB, com já há algum tempo, né? Então nós temos práticas consolidadas nesses dois programas, e a Sphere deve seguir também para o programa DP agora com a inauguração das suas novas unidades nas principais capitais do Brasil, começando em 2021, vamos manter o suspense, mas já com as primeiras unidades previstas para 2021.
Muito obrigada, Susan. Bom, muito obrigada pela participação de todos. A live foi gravada, então esse link vai ser enviado para todo mundo que se cadastrou. E é isso de novo, a Susan já falou muito bem. Natália, thank you a lot for being here with us. It was a pleasure. It's always a pleasure to have you here. And Susan, thank you a lot for you too.
Thank you, Lu.
Obrigada, gente.